Welcome to Picks with the Professor, the show where a real statistics professor
and his cousin
gives you sports betting tips. I'm your host, Professor Sides. For the latest updates, information, and picks, you can follow me on Twitter at Professor Sides, and you can follow my cousin Jared on Twitter, my cousin Twitter on Jared or whatever.
Yeah.
Cousin Jared, if you do that thing. We're talking college football again today. We've got more games from week 4 of the 2022 season. In case you're new here, I built a mathematical model that predicts what the spread should be for every FBS college football game and information, along with each team's power rating and a graded A, B, or C pick, either now or coming later for every game. It's available in the Google Sheet that is linked in the show's description. Do what you want with these picks, all of them, some of them, or none of them. Take what you like and leave the rest. Our goals in this episode are to share key information about this week's games, give you a few things to think on, and explain why certain plays are being made in order for you to come up with picks that you are comfortable with. We never recommend blindly tailing or fading any pick, but rather to hear the justifications and thought processes to make sure you're fully on board with us or against us before investing your hard-earned money. And as we go through the plays, remember that there are no locks in gambling. So I'll give you our loves, likes, and leans to indicate my confidence level with respect to scaling wagers. Cousin Jared will also be utilizing a weighted unit scale this college football season. And as always, please remember that good and bad variance will occur. So as much as we'd like to say we'll be profitable each and every week, that is an impossible reality for any gambler. Cousin Jared, how you doing today?
Doing pretty well. Excited to talk about some more of the college football slate for this weekend.
I feel like we're in the middle of it now, and it's like it's still exciting, but it's starting to feel like the little bit of that early season excitement's wore off, and now it's like, okay, now we got to really figure out some of these teams.
Exactly, and I think that the first couple of games we talk about here are going to give us a great opportunity to do just that.
Absolutely, and I wanted to say, I think it's interesting at this point of the season. We've kind of talked about it a little bit, but at this point, we've got to figure out what should we overreact to and what should we not overreact to. And my answer is that's kind of why I built the model, to try to synthesize all that data and help us figure out those things that we do a lot of research on the side, right? And you look into, win expectancy, and you can look at turnovers, and you can look at success rate. You can look at all those type of things. That's kind of what the model's trying to do, is synthesize all that information, because there's some teams I think we should be overreacting to and some we shouldn't be overreacting to. And that's kind of what the model's going to try to help us do, to help us navigate that like landmine, path here through the early part of the season.
I agree. And I love when the model overreacts with me, because that makes me feel validated.
Yeah, absolutely. The model's built to underreact. So yeah, I'm with you. When the model overreacts, I'm like, oh, it's seeing something that we really, it's like, it's usually something we've seen as well. We're like, oh, it thought so too. Okay. It's really bad.
Yeah.
All right. Well, before we get to today's show, some reminders. Please hit that like button if you're on YouTube. Also, if you are, please consider subscribing or following. It's free, and the only way to ensure you don't miss any of the college basketball, MLB, or college football content that this channel provides. And a reminder, we've started up a Patreon page for those of you looking to support the show. Membership starts at just $3 per month. Benefits include things such as exclusive access to the play of the day, and on college football Saturdays, again, the play of the time slot had 4 or 5 different plays last college football Saturday. Only missed one of them. We've got a Discord group. That's just a group chat where we all talk about line movements and stuff like that. It's a lot of fun in there. Ad-free and early access to the shows, and early access to projected spreads. I think there's like 3 games in a row that we're going to talk about that the early access to the projected spreads would have really got you some better numbers here. But let's get to it. All lines courtesy of Bet Online. Sign-up link is in the show's description and current as of the time of this recording. It is late night Tuesday, September 20th. We're recording this. We're going to start off finishing out the Friday slate. We covered the one Friday game on episode 1. If you haven't seen it, Cousin Jared, point to this guy there. You can hit us up in that corner right there. I'll put episode 1 right there. If you haven't seen episode 1, you can go back and watch that. That's where the other Friday game is. We're going to talk about the other 2 here tonight. First one, 8 p.m. Eastern, Nevada and Air Force. And talk about disappointing. I mean, Air Force really laid an egg. I mean, I think we were all like on the Air Force bandwagon, and they just stunk it up last week. And that was obviously discouraging. Nevada has been obviously terrible all season. Yeah. Somehow didn't get that cover against Iowa. They hung in there for us, but
they hung in that game for like 7 hours.
For 7 hours, for longer than anybody should have, right? Barely missing the cover on that one. I'm going to take the points with Nevada again. It's 24. It's a lot of points. The model says it should be only 20 and a half. If Air Force had played worth a darn last weekend, I think the model would have said 24, but of course in the line probably would have been like 27.
Right.
So I'm taking the points, but I'm very nervous about this one. I'm taking it because I'm saying maybe the model still sees something that I don't. And this is a total of 45, so a low scoring game. And if Air Force doesn't really come out to play here, maybe they don't put Nevada away. Maybe they win, 28-7, something like that. But like I said, I'm taking Nevada just in case the model sees something I don't with a C grade pick. But I'm very nervous that Air Force is just going to run up and down the field on them. I have to think that Air Force offense is more effective than Iowa's. Obviously, their defense isn't as good as Iowa's, but I'm not confident that Nevada can score hardly anything. So I'll take the points with them. I think it's a lot of points because I just don't think Air Force they've shown signs of being good, but they also have shown signs of not being good. So
right.
I'm just going to take the points here, but it's not my most confident play. It's kind of a principled play, taking all these points, especially with a low total, but again, not my favorite. Cousin Jared, what's your insight for us on this one?
If I had to pick a side on this, I think I'd probably lay the points with Air Force just because I think Nevada is really, really bad. But to your point, like I understand why you're doing what you're doing. That's a lot of points, especially if Air Force gets up, late in the game, they could just try to run the ball, run the clock out, and everything. So I can definitely see that being the case. I'm more concerned about the Mountain West at this point, Mountain Division, because who wants to win that division? Like, is it?
Nobody.
Is it? Yeah, I thought it was going to be Air Force after last week. I'm not sold on Boise. Wyoming, I guess, has gotten a better leg up on those teams now since they had the victory over Air Force.
Yeah,
they've still got plenty of holes. It's not going to be Utah State. It's not going to be New Mexico. It's not going to be Colorado State. And so, I guess it's Boise, Air Force, or Wyoming. But man, everybody has had their kind of flaws at this point. It's a much more flawed division than I would have thought coming into the season.
Yeah, absolutely. The other Friday night game, speaking of one of those teams, Boise State, is a 15.5-point favorite at UTEP. Model says this one should be 19.4. It's closer to an A grade. I'm just nervous with Boise. They seem to be a team that when they're big favorites like this on the road, I've just seen too many times where they don't really go out there and cut a big number. And so I just have a little bit of a lack of confidence in them because of that. I like backing Boise. I just can't give it an A grade. This was like 12.5. Absolutely. I don't think we're ever going to see that number. That 15.5, again, model thinks that the most likely outcomes are 20, 21, 17, that sort of thing. So we're winners on all of them. Like I said, just Boise State on a Friday night on the road. It feels like a game that they're up, 14 in the third quarter, and they just don't seem to care to put them away. So I think it's the right side, but it's not one that I have a lot of confidence in. If this was in Boise, maybe a little bit different of a story. We've also seen Boise sometimes in these games win by 50. So it feels just like there's a lot of variance, I guess is what I'm trying to say in this one. If you're looking at, I might be more comfortable playing an alternate line on this one and laying a really big number and just say, hey, Boise might go out there and kick the crap out of them. And if they do, I've got massive plus odds. But it's like I said, a lot of variance, I think, in this game. Not that UTEP is any good. Cousin Jared, what do you think?
I am going to be on the under 46 here. I saw everything from UTEP that I needed to see in their game against New Mexico last week. When New Mexico, you're playing against them and you only get 10 points and you have 7 turnovers in the game. I'm concerned about what Boise is going to do to you. So I know they're playing out in El Paso. I know Boise State has been up and down on the road in recent years. But I think Boise's problems are mostly on the offensive side of the ball. I think their defense is still fairly solid. And so I see this being an ugly game. And I don't think that UTEP is going to score many points at all. This definitely has the feel of like 27-3 or 27-10, something like that. So I'm going to take the under 46. I just don't see how UTEP, I don't even know if they find the end zone against this Boise State defense.
Yeah, I agree. The implied team total would be probably 14.5, and I would definitely go under the team total of UTEP 14.5. I'm with you. If this game is 10-3, I'd be like, well, yeah, that's about right. I don't think it's going to be 10-3, but I mean, if that was the final score in this game, I think we all would just be like, well, that's kind of figures. I mean, I'm like, I don't think UTEP's going to do much. Or like I said, with Boise, like I said, that might be why I would look at that team total for UTEP under, because Boise, and sometimes in these games, goes out there and just puts up 50. And if it's 50-3, I'd be like, well, we know UTEP was bad, right? But I'm with you. I think the thing we definitely agree on is UTEP isn't scoring much. 14.5 seems like way too many points if you're looking at team totals.
Yep, exactly.
12 p.m. Eastern on Saturday now, Bowling Green at Mississippi State. Model says this one should be Bulldogs minus 31. Bowling Green is ranked 114th. That's not very good. Mississippi State still in the top 25, even after losing to LSU. I like laying the points with Mississippi State. It's only a C-grade pick just for fear of the look-ahead spots. Also coming off of such a physical game against LSU, and then the next week playing Texas A&M. It's not a situation where I feel really confident they're going to have the starters in for very long in this one, but Bowling Green is absolutely terrible. If Mississippi State plays all 60 minutes, they're covering this number.
Yeah.
I want to get it in today because 30 is on the right side of 31-32. It's obviously on the – I don't think it's going to go down to 28, right? 29, 30 are mostly dead numbers. I don't think it's going to 28 or 27, right? That'd be fantastic, but I don't think it's going to. Just in case this gets bet up, if it gets bet up to that 31, 32 area, that's a complete pass. So at this point, I like being on this side of 30. I just can't go too heavy on it because I'm just not sure if they're going to have any interest in playing their starters, the entire fourth quarter, really.
Right.
And so that's why it's only a C-grade pick for me. Because, Jen, what do you think?
I don't really have anything insightful about this game. What I think if I had to pick an angle on this, and I don't know if the lines are out yet, but maybe lay the points with like Mississippi State in the first half. Because I could definitely see this going like the first half of the Mississippi State-Memphis game, the first game they played of the season where Mississippi State just crushed them in the first half. And then, they kind of just messed around there. Memphis scored some points at the end of the game. But
Memphis is a much better team than Bowling Green.
That is correct. And like you said, with Mississippi State playing Texas A&M next week, no reason to keep Will Rogers out there into the fourth quarter or anything like that. Most likely if this game plays out like we think. So no real insight about the spread or total here, but definitely if you wanted to look like a first half number and lay the points, I mean, like 21 points, 23. Like, I don't know. Like, I think they're just going to crush them in the first half. So,
I'd be very happy laying 20.
Okay. So there you go. 20 or 21 points. I'd lay
21. I'd lay 21. I wouldn't be very happy. I'd do it. Right. I feel like, I'm with you, 21, 23. I feel like those are numbers you still lay being on the right side of 24. But 20 would be the one where I'm excited to lay 20 because I'm with you. I think it's going to be pretty ugly. It's just I don't know how that second half is going to play out.
Right,
so,
right.
Yeah, absolutely. I think a great angle there looking at the first half play. Even if the number gets big, it's probably worth it.
Yep.
3:30 Eastern. I'm really curious to hear your thoughts on this one. I want to set this up for you. Notre Dame and North Carolina. Notre Dame, fair to say, a disappointment this season. True or false?
I guess true. I mean, like
not a trick question.
Yeah, I yes, I'm surprised about the loss at Marshall, but I almost think that the loss at Marshall was acquitted with how it made up for almost how well they played Ohio State. Because I thought they were just going to get blown out in that game. So True. Yes, I think overall it's a disappointment, but I think I've seen definitely some positive things from Notre Dame. It's not all negative.
Right. North Carolina. Have we seen anything from North Carolina that indicates that they're any good? I mean,
their offense. I think their offense is good. I think their defense is garbage.
But that's only half of the equation.
Yeah.
Their defense is so terrible. I don't quite understand the narrative around this. It's like, I'm absolutely with you. Like Notre Dame, the loss to Marshall, I picked Marshall there. I expected Marshall to cover that game. I didn't expect them to win. Yeah. Last week against Cal, they looked better, I think, in the second half. They were actually moving the ball a little bit on the ground. The line was looking a lot better. Still didn't cover. So I feel like people are like, Notre Dame lost to Marshall. Notre Dame didn't cover to Cal. And there's this like Notre Dame's garbage narrative. And it's like, they're not a top 5 team, but they were never a top 5 team.
Right.
And I just don't see anything on North Carolina that's impressed me. I've got an A-grade pick here on the Fighting Irish at plus 1.5. You can look money line as well. It's one of those like immovable force meets the unstoppable whatever, right? Things where it's like Notre Dame's offense has struggled, but the way that their line played in the second half of the Cal game, I was watching most of that. They looked a lot better. They actually looked competent. I feel like they got things rolling there. They ought to score off of North Carolina. And the way their defense, how good their defense is, I think they can get a couple of stops. Now I think their offense is going to stop themselves a few times, but it's going to be kind of one of those back and forth tight ball games here. I feel like this is the type of game that if somebody's smart, whoever scores with like 30 seconds to go to tie it won't kick the extra point. They'll go for 2 and try to win it. This feels like a game where like which team wants to go to overtime in this situation? Now they probably won't, but it feels like that'd be the smart thing to do. And somebody wins by 1 point. Probably doesn't happen, but that's my like bold prediction of the week: is somebody wins this game by 1 point. I don't know what kind of odds you can give me on that. It's probably crazy high. I'm taking the 1.5. The model has Notre Dame ranked 26 outside the top 25. Now it has North Carolina at 45th. Bottom line is, I just don't think North Carolina is a complete football team. They've got a good offense. They've got a terrible defense. And I know the game's in North Carolina, but model says Notre Dame by 4.4. I don't quite understand the North Carolina love. Give me Notre Dame here, A-grade pick. Cousin Jared, what do you got?
This feels like I would need to be getting 3 points either way to feel comfortable about this game. Because I think you outlined a lot of good reasons to back Notre Dame, but man, I just can't get over some of the stuff that we've seen from their offense. And I know that, North Carolina's defense has been really, really bad, but also like, I have a feeling North Carolina's going to put up some points. Like, I don't know how many they're going to put up, but I think they're definitely going to score. I think I would have to say that Notre Dame's going to have to score like at least, 28, 31, 34 points probably to win this game. I mean, do you think I'm crazy saying that?
No, I think they'll score. I think this is the week that their offense looks better and puts up points, not because their offense is good, but because North Carolina's defense is bad.
Yeah. So,
I mean, the prediction on this would be about 28-28 is what the total implies.
Yeah.
That feels about right. I think he's going to get some touchdowns.
I guess thinking through this here, the thing that probably appeals to me most is I don't know if it would get there, but if this total got to 55, I think that the way that I would phrase it is I have more faith in Notre Dame's offense than I do in North Carolina's defense.
Agreed.
Which
is part of the reason why I'm picking Notre Dame. Exactly that.
Yeah. And so to me, that doesn't give me enough comfort with Notre Dame because I still think that North Carolina could win a shootout, but it does give me enough faith that this could go over like 55 if it got to that number, or, you get a decent shot at a push at 55. Yeah. So, 56, sure. Like if you're going to play over 55, besides the push protection, there's not much difference at 56.
Hey, the game is the final total is going to be 55 or 57. It's going to be 28-27. Someone's going for 2 at the end.
Yeah.
And they're either going to win 29-28 or 28-27.
Yeah. Okay. So
how about this one? How about this one? Total number of field goals in this game, over under 1.5.
I'd go over. I think Notre Dame can get a stop near the red zone or within field goal range, and I think Notre Dame can stop themselves one time on offense. So I think I'd go over on that.
I think Notre Dame has more of a chance of kicking field goals. It's another reason I like the plus 1.5 because I feel like that's the chance they get 2 field goals. Now it might turn out when they go for 2 and because they've got 2 field goals, but I think it's more likely that Notre Dame can move the ball in North Carolina, but stops themselves and kicks field goals. I kind of think North Carolina is either going to be like 3 and out, or once they get going, if they get moving, they're going to score a touchdown.
Yeah,
I just don't see North Carolina kicking many field goals.
Yeah.
It should be a really fascinating game, and I think we're going to learn a lot about both teams because if Notre Dame's offense is ever going to have success, it's here, and if North Carolina's defense is ever going to have success, it's here, right?
Yeah. If Notre Dame scores like 17 points in this game, they've got some
massive red flags. Yeah, massive red flags. 3:30 Eastern, Middle Tennessee at Miami. Miami's a massive favorite, as they should be. Model says this should be Miami minus 24. I'm going to grab the 26.5 with Middle Tennessee State. It's a B-grade pick. Miami coming off of a tough game last week. I just think this is a lot of points. I still kind of have faith in Middle Tennessee. Not a ton of faith, but a little enough. It's kind of like this is like my last hurrah with Middle Tennessee State. If they can't keep this close, especially with Miami being a up and down-ish team, they don't deserve to be in the top 100 of college football. Right now, they're ranked 96th. And so, I mean, if they're going to hang on to that top 100 rating, they got to lose this by 20. They got to hang in there and keep it respectable. If they lose this by 40, they're out of the top 100 just because that would just illustrate how bad they are. So not a good team, but I think they're good enough to hang in there. I think it's too many points. Miami just, again, hasn't really impressed me. I really thought they'd put up a better fight in College Station. They had some opportunities, but they just couldn't get out of their own way. And if they make any of those mistakes like that, it's going to be hard to cover such a big number. So I'm grabbing all these points. B-grade pick for me on the plus 26.5. Cousin Jared, what do you got?
So I think the thing that caught my eye here was the total of 52. Usually when I look at totals, I take different inputs and everything, look at some projections and try to come up with something. I haven't seen anything that would, say from a statistical perspective that this should be under the number of 52. This is completely coming from my gut here. With Middle Tennessee State, that first game against James Madison where they just got trucked. And I think they only scored like 7 points against James Madison. I think going up against, obviously, a team of Miami's caliber on defense, you're definitely going to have some problems scoring points. But for Miami, what I saw being at that game last week, Miami A&M got some pressure on the quarterback, but I don't know if they got a sack the whole game. The quarterback had some time to stay in the pocket and everything, and he missed a lot of throws. And so that's kind of what I was indicating with it not getting out of their own way. It was like it felt like watching that they had the chances to be right in that ball game, but they just couldn't do it. It was. Yeah. The quarterback missed some throws. They ran the ball okay, but they just couldn't get anything downfield. If there's any type of hangover or Van Dyke doesn't kind of get it rolling, passing the ball, I think this is going to be a low scoring game. So again, this is just completely gut feel, kind of what I saw last week. I think Middle Tennessee State's going to have some problems scoring some points. And if Miami has any type of hangover at all, or they don't get that passing game going, and I don't know what his name is, but their top receiver was out last week. If he's not coming back, I just think that would be even more reason they would have a hard time putting up some points. So, again, usually I have some type of statistical analysis that I like to break this down on, but this is just completely what I saw with my eyes last week. I think I would have a hard time seeing this game getting to 52.
I don't know about the receiver. All I can say is Miami has a bye next week. So if there's really no reason to rush them back for this game with a bye next week.
And I assume they're probably starting conference play after that. So definitely even more reason not to rush them back.
Yeah, North Carolina after that, which North Carolina, a team that should never be favored by too much or underdogged by too much, because their offense is so their defense is so bad, it's hard to beat anybody by too much, but their offense is so good, it's hard to really blow them out, right? It's North Carolina can play with anybody.
and you will need your best receiver against North Carolina. I feel confident saying that.
Right. Yeah. So I don't know have any inside information, but my just thought would be like with the bye week next week in this game, there's no need to rush anybody back unless they're 100% already.
Yep.
3:30 Eastern, Minnesota at Michigan State, a conference game here. Model says this is basically a pickle, maybe a slight lean to Michigan State. I'm going to grab the 2.5 with Michigan State at even money. It's a B grade pick. If it gets to 3, that's an A grade, so I'm holding back that issue. But the even money is relatively valuable. The probability this game lands on 2 is higher now than in years past, given the changes to the overtime rules. Obviously Michigan State, huge step back last week, very disappointing.
Yeah, definitely. You can say that again. Very disappointing.
Yeah, very disappointing. This is what we'd like to talk about at the beginning of the show. How much do we overreact to it? Model still says Michigan State, it's taken that into account, but doesn't think they're quite as bad as maybe we would think just from watching that. Still ranks them 24th. Model has Minnesota 14th. The other reason I like Michigan State here, I could be wrong. I don't like peruse all the other, where the rankings are, where people are, but like having Minnesota 14th, I feel like I'm pretty high on them. Like that seems high. And if I'm that high on Minnesota and I still think this is a pick 'em, then I feel pretty confident going against it. Like it's not one of those things. Like I don't think there's any way you can say that I'm underestimating how good Minnesota is. I've got them 14th. Like find me a bunch of people who have them that, higher than that. Yeah. So I don't think I'm underestimating Minnesota. So I'm going to take Michigan State here. I'd rather get 3, but at home, I think they can hang in there. Tight game. Give me the even money too is pretty valuable. So B grade pick for me. And again, if it goes up to 3, then I can throw that third unit on it. Total here is 51. Because what do you got for us? I'm not as high as the model is on Minnesota, obviously, but that was one of the teams that I mentioned in the season previews that I thought could potentially, come out of the Big Ten West with all the issues that we knew. Well, I thought we knew what issues Iowa had. They had even more issues than I thought they had. And Nebraska, we thought we knew the issues Nebraska had. It was even more too.
And then Wisconsin losing to Washington State. I know it's not a conference game, doesn't affect the Big Ten West, but I think all of the potential issues I identified with those top teams have kind of come to fruition. I mentioned Minnesota as a team that can win the Big Ten West. I would have thought, worst case scenario, this would have been a pick 'em, on the road at Michigan State after last week. I can't believe that this is Michigan State getting 2.5 points at home. So I'm staying away. at even money. I am staying away from this game for now because like I never would have thought it would have been 2.5. If this could ever possibly get to 3, then that's great. I'd love to jump on it then. If not, maybe later in the week, this is something you play money line if you get any kind of plus odds on it or something like that. I feel like this line is an overreaction to what we saw last week, and the model is not overreacting. So this is one of those things where your mind might tell you to overreact, but I'd probably lean towards the model here and say there's something a little off about this line.
Yeah, the model's reacting to Michigan State, but not overreacting, and it's dropped them for sure, as it should. But I don't think we should make that big of a deal out of it. I still think this Michigan State team is solid. It's not like they're terrible at home. I'm with you. I would have thought pick them. That's kind of where it started out. It's just been an influx of money here on Minnesota. Don't know if that's real or what. Who knows, right? But I'm going to take advantage of it. Like I said, if it gets to 3, it's even better, right?
Yep.
Still sitting at 3:30 Eastern kickoff slot here. Florida at Tennessee. Tennessee's a 10.5-point favorite. Model says it should be Tennessee by 15. The model ranks Tennessee 6th behind the top 3, and then
Michigan,
Oklahoma and Michigan are 4 and 5, pretty close together. And then Tennessee's that next team there. A little bit of a gap between 5 and 6. Model thinks Tennessee's that next best team there. I haven't been impressed with Florida. I took Florida in that first game. I think I faded them ever since. I think I'm perfect on Florida this year. I'm going to fade them again. It's a B grade pick. It's a B grade pick here at 10.5. It opened for a hot second at 9.5. That would have been an A grade pick. I'm hoping this gets down to 10 for that third unit, but I'd at least rather lock in 10.5 before it gets to 11. Model thinks the most likely outcomes for this are 13 and 14, and the next most likely 17. So we win in all of those. I just think Florida is, an up and down team, a frisky team. They're the type of team that I'd have more faith that they come out and hang close and maybe win a thriller. I think that's just as likely as they lose by 28. I'm not saying they don't lose by exactly 10 or 11 or something. We got to be smart about playing numbers, but this Florida team just feels like a team that when things go right and everything's clicking for them, they're really good. And when things don't, they would get destroyed at Tennessee if things aren't going well. So I think it's just more likely it's a blowout. I'm going to be on Tennessee. Like I said, I don't mind laying the points here. Again, a pretty solid little edge here, about a 7% edge according to the model at this number. So room to add a third unit depending on what happens here, but I'm laying the 10.5 with Tennessee. Cousin Joe, what do you got?
Wish this would have been at that 9.5 when it opened.
Yeah, 9.5. Just A grade, move on, done.
Yeah. So this is one where just off the top of my head, I don't feel like I feel like if I had to pick a side, I'd be on Tennessee for sure. Yeah. But it's just not, this is a rivalry game. Like this feels like one of those games where some crazy stuff would happen. But I think just to further back up your point, what I would say is Anthony Richardson looked okay, like fine in that first game against Utah. 17 to 24 passing, 168 yards, no touchdowns, no picks, but he had 100 rushing yards and had 3 rushing touchdowns.
I would say above average. It was a solid game for him.
Yeah, in that first game against Utah. Problem is, after that, against Kentucky, he had 140 passing yards, 2 interceptions, and 4 rushing yards.
A back-breaking interception.
Yes, a couple of bad ones. And then against USF last week, only passed for 112 yards, had another 2 interceptions, and only rushed for 24 yards and no touchdowns. If he does not get going in this game, Florida will not be able to keep pace with Tennessee at all. So I think this kind of lends credence to your point. From what we've seen so far from Anthony Richardson, definitely has the talent to keep Florida in this game. But
it's just can you do it for 60 minutes on the road in a hostile environment? Yeah,
because like we've mentioned with Tennessee a couple of times this year, they're going to score touchdowns often, and so 1 or 2 mistakes, and that's going to cost you the game. So I can't get there myself with the 10.5, but man, if Anthony Richardson doesn't play better, this game is going to get ugly fast.
Yeah, I faded Florida last week. It did seem like a trap game, a look-ahead spot, that sort of thing. Yeah. So I wasn't surprised that they struggled. I was surprised they struggled to the extent that they did. But this pick is not really based off of that whatsoever. It's just more about I'm just not convinced Florida's in the same zip code as Tennessee, and that's a really tough place to play. When Tennessee's good, that place will be rocking here on Saturday afternoon. And like I said, I think it's more likely to be a blowout than anything else.
Yep.
3:30 Eastern, Indiana and Cincinnati. This is one that model set Cincinnati minus 19. if you got the early projections and saw that 19, you were all over the 14. It hung around for a little bit, and then it was gone. And now it's up to 16.5. I'm going to lock in the 16.5 right now. It's stupid minus 125 odds. I'm going to lock it in before it gets to 17. It's a B grade pick, but I mean, if Cincinnati shows up, this is going to be a rout. You know, and you never know. You know, last week Cincinnati really struggled in that first half. Second half came out to play. You know, if they play like that second half, like the team they're capable of playing, Indiana is not very good, and it's going to be a blowout. Yep. If Cincinnati lets them hang in, we've seen it many a time here in the last, 10, 11 months or so, not quite back full calendar here, but the end of last year. So only a B grade pick because the odds are terrible. Sad I wasn't able to lock in 14 as the official pick. Again, if you had those early projections, you could have got the opener at 14. But I still think Cincinnati's decided to be on here. But you just, in the back of your mind, you're just never quite sure if Cincinnati's going to, play with their food for the first half and not be able to cover a relatively large number. So to me, it can't be an A grade pick at a number like 16.5. Total 57. Because Jared, what do you got for us here?
I am on the under 57 here. This game reminds me, at least from the perspective of the matchup of Indiana's offense versus Illinois' defense from earlier this season. And Indiana got completely lucky to win that game. Their offense was horribly inefficient that game. And if Illinois just hadn't done Illinois things, they would have.
Or the ref decided that there wasn't a touchdown when there was, and then we're somehow review missed it. I mean, that,
Yeah. So the fact that I have no confidence at all in Indiana's offense against this Luke Fickell defense, I would go to the other side and say, I think Cincinnati is a good team, but definitely I feel like one of their weaknesses is quarterback. And so, that game against Arkansas sticks out in my mind where, it feels like there was just one too many mistakes that kept Cincinnati from winning that game, specifically from the quarterback position. So it's one of those things where I just don't trust Cincinnati's quarterback to make enough plays. Sure, he can make enough plays for them to cover, but I don't see how either team gets close to scoring enough for this to go over the total of 57. So I feel pretty good about the under 57 in this spot.
And another one where I really would like the Indiana team total under as well. If you wanted to split units or add to that, team total here would be about 20. I don't see IU getting to 20 points in this game. I think 10 seems about right. The question is, does Cincinnati, like I said, just screw around and do they only score, 23, or are they actually going to get out and score 40? Because I think I'm with you. I like the under. I think Cincinnati could score a bunch, but I don't think Indiana helps them out enough to get to this number 57. So another angle where there'd be that team total under, because I think both you and I are in agreement that Indiana is just not going to have an easy time scoring. That offense just isn't very good. This is a stark contrast to the Western Kentucky defense that they faced last week.
Correct.
Very, very different.
Yep.
3:30 Eastern, James Madison at Appalachian State. Does Appalachian State play not big games at this point? I mean, my goodness.
I mean, would you be surprised if this game wasn't some type of barn burner as well?
No, it should be. I expect this to be another fascinating game, right? They have the North Carolina game and the A&M game, and then last week, game day's there, and the Hail Mary that was tipped backwards and caught in the rain. I mean, that was just a wild ending. At some point, App State feels like, I don't know what drug or alcohol analogy to use, but they've got to come off this high and crash and just pass out at some point, right?
You would think.
I mean, have they just won that North Carolina game, which they had a chance to on that 2-point conversion? I mean, they had with whatever it was, 30 seconds to go or whatever. What a magical season. But I mean, at some point it's got to catch up to them. Another one where if you had the early numbers on this one, you knew which side I'd like. James Madison was +9 for a while there on Sunday. Would have loved to have had +9. I still think +7's a great play. It's an A grade play for me at the 7. At 7, dropping to 6.5 would be a B grade pick. But having that push protection on 7, I mean, this has to be a one-score game and a tight game. That's a crazy finish, right? Yeah. So there you go. We're going to win with +7. I don't know who's going to win, but they won't win by double digits. It's obviously not that simple. App State's a better team. We still don't know a lot about James Madison, but the model has them, at this point, a pretty average FBS team. Only 14 spots below Appalachian State in my ratings model, so it should be App State minus about 5.5. So getting 7 here still offers pretty good value in that push protection. I love 7.5 even more, but I'm okay grabbing 7 with an A grade play here. I think it should be a tight, entertaining ball game. So give me the points. A-grade play for me, total of 60. Cousin Jared, what do you got?
I have nothing else to say about this game. I think it's going to be an amazing game. We talk about the Mountain West Mountain Division all the time. The Sun Belt East. We talked about this.
We talked about this. Yeah, how excited we were for it.
The season preview. And okay, Georgia State is 0-2. They're at the bottom of the. I mean, they haven't played any conference games right now. They're the only team in the division that hasn't won a game yet. The other teams in that division. Okay, so App State, Coastal Carolina, who I will admit has not looked good, but is 3-0 and has a pedigree of playing well once conference play gets going. James Madison, Georgia Southern, who beat Nebraska, Marshall, who beat Notre Dame, and Old Dominion, who beat Georgia Tech, almost beat Virginia. This, I cannot wait. I mean, like, if you don't have an ESPN Plus subscription to watch all of the Sun Belt games, you need to go get that now, because I think this division is going to be exciting all season long.
Unfortunately, ESPN Plus is not paying us for this advertisement.
They are not. But you should pay them, because it is exciting football.
I agree. I wish they have, and they might. I don't know. Every year they have different deals, but I would love if they have like a Wednesday or Thursday night conference game of the week, so that way we can kind of have a standalone game to watch. That would be fantastic. I don't know if they do or not. Every year it's a little bit different with who gets what games there when we get to conference play in November. Last game of this time slot, 3:30 Eastern, North Texas and Memphis. We chatted about this one real quick before we hit the record button. A game that we would have had a drastically different opinion on a couple of weeks ago, but North Texas just getting smoked at SMU. And we were kind of saying, hey, we think that maybe says a little bit more about SMU than North Texas. And I still think SMU is a good team. But then after seeing what North Texas did against UNLV, I think it says a lot about UNT as well. Right. Memphis, didn't look good against Mississippi State. Of course, Mississippi State's a really good football team. So what does that mean? In Memphis, I'm going to lay the 11.5 points. It's an A-grade pick for me. Model says it should be 15, so the most likely outcomes are 13 and 14. I think it's never this simple, right? Memphis could win by like 10 or 14, whatever, but I kind of think this game is either going to get really ugly, like the UNLV game, or North Texas hangs around, uglies it up, and somehow it's a 3-point game. What I've seen from North Texas this year, though, I have not been impressed with. I was high on them coming into the season. We were excited after we got that A-grade winner against UTEP. And then what we've seen from UTEP has also been a little bit of, they're also really bad at taking a massive step backwards as well. I just am not sold on this North Texas team. The model is overreacting a little bit to North Texas, and I think it's accurate based off what I've seen of them. Just not impressed. Really was, again, thought that the end of last season was putting them in the right direction, but I don't think that's the case. I think that whole quarterback controversy coming in maybe said a little bit more than we realized about just the uncertain state of their offense. Hasn't looked good. I'm going to lay it with Memphis. I think it's more likely to be a blowout than a tight game, so it's an A-grade pick for me on them. Like I said, model thinks the most likely outcomes are 13 and 14. Personally, I wouldn't be surprised if it's 24.
So, man, I feel like we know a little bit about North Texas. Like you mentioned, it's a team that we've kind of followed closely the first couple of weeks here of the season. I put Memphis, even though they've played 3 games, I still put Memphis squarely in the camp of I have no idea what to make of them. That lost that first game of the season at Mississippi State. It was 49-23. Final score a little misleading. They did nothing in the first half. They scored all of their points in the second half when Mississippi State had kind of packed it in. Right. And then week 2, they got to play Navy, who, again, a team that we've discussed ad nauseum how bad they are.
We'll talk about them later on tonight, I think.
Yeah. And then they had a 12-point win at home against Arkansas State last week, they being Memphis. I haven't watched Arkansas State closely this year. Arkansas State's defense last year was atrocious. It was one of the worst defenses of all time. And I'm not exaggerating when I say that. It was really one of the worst defenses ever. And so I still, winning a 12-point game against Arkansas State at home, I don't feel like I have learned much either. This is a game that I just completely feel like, man, this is just a stay away, just because you could tell me anything would happen in this game and I would believe you. So, man, hope, maybe I would love for Memphis to blow out North Texas here, because then I feel like I know at least a little something. But if this is another close game between these two teams, I feel like I'm in the same place I am now, where I have no idea what to make of either one of them.
Right. Model still ranks Memphis 64th, so pretty much smack average. And I think kind of what you say aligns with that, right? We don't know a lot about them. It's kind of a meh situation. I mean, that kind of says mediocre average football team, right? At this point, it seems a little bit much to say they're any better than average. I don't think they've given that impression, but I'm not sure how much worse than average they are either, given how many mediocre teams there are at this point, right?
Yeah, yeah, and maybe it's just like maybe it's a symptom of the conference that they play in, because the American, I feel like you've got some really good teams at the top and you've got, really bad teams at the bottom. And so then you've got teams like Memphis where you're just
right
like,
in
I don't know
between.
what to do with them. Yeah.
To the night game, 7:30 Eastern kickoff, UConn and NC State. Model makes this one NC State minus 40. Model has NC State a top 25 team. UConn ranked 126, not even in the top 125. This is a massive mismatch. I have concerns about NC State. I think they were overhyped coming into the season. I think we've seen that they're probably not as good as maybe people built them up to be. But at home against UConn, I think is not a situation where that's going to be shown. Total, this one's 49. So the implied team total, just from looking at this, is UConn at 5. Obviously, they probably won't score 5 points.
Only Iowa can do that.
Exactly. And I don't think UConn's going to pin NC State deep so they can get a safety. Maybe NC State, snaps a punt out of the end zone or something. Yeah. I'm not sure UConn scores in this game. I think that NC State's offense is a little bit lagging at this point, but this is the perfect time to get that right. I'm going to lay the 39. I think they come out and kick some tail. We talked a lot about, hey, we were high on UConn because they hung in there with Utah State. We've seen what Utah State did. We were like, no, actually, UConn just still isn't very good. UConn might not be in the bottom 3 anymore, but they're still a very bad football team, and the bottom drops off pretty quickly there. So I'm going to lay it with NC State. B grade pick. Can't be that confident with this big of a number. But like I said, I just don't think UConn scores. I think NC State basically names their score in this one. I think it's more like a 45-0 game. Because, Jared, what do you got?
I hope all of you viewers and listeners know that we have a perverse joy in talking about the really bad teams.
Yes.
And I think even when the really bad teams are going to get blown out, we enjoy, for example, like Michigan and Hawaii earlier this year. We love talking about that game. What was the total going to be? JJ McCarthy starting his first game. Was Hawaii going to score? There was a lot of things that we could talk about. This game is just gross. There's nothing exciting.
They talk about is UConn going to score? That's the question.
I would lean towards no, but what do I know really? This is just one of those. It's like where NC State isn't we just talked about. You have Michigan in the top 5, and so seeing a top 5 team versus a bottom 5 team, Michigan, Hawaii, that was exciting. This is just bleh. It's
kind of sad.
Yeah, it's just not exciting. So sorry, people. I didn't pump you up for this one, but this one's just, I think, going to be a blah game.
Yeah, NC State has Clemson next week, so they have no interest in running up the score. Again, another reason it's only a B grade pick. But like I said, I just think UConn, is terrible. I think NC State, this is especially after last week, facing a solid and improving Tech defense, right? Mm-hmm. Feels like the game plan should be, let's get our offense clicking heading into next week. Let's try all the things. Let's see if we can get it going. Feels like a game they're up 35-0 in the half. First team offense comes out. They score another touchdown at the third quarter. They're up 42-0. And then it's just, I don't think UConn can score. I think we've got to be up early. Another situation like you were talking about, maybe a first half play. It's going to be a crazy high number. Yeah. But NC State minus 27 in the first half, I'd lay 27.
Yeah, this is definitely a candidate for a first half play too. I think that's probably, is the first half line here going to be 28?
It might be 28 and a half. 28 and a half would be a lot harder to stomach. 28, 27, I'm on 28 and a half.
Yeah.
Blah.
Yeah. Exactly. That was my analysis of the whole game. Yeah.
Fair. 7 p.m. Eastern, Marshall at Troy. Marshall is a 3-point favorite. Odds at minus 121. I'm going to lay the 3. Model says it should be 5.5. It's a B grade pick. I've got Marshall ranked 60th and Troy ranked 85th. I still think Marshall's a solid team. I just don't have a lot of faith in Troy. I don't really have much else to say about this game other than I think Marshall's the better team. I think they go on the road and win, and that means I'm laying a short number. It's pretty. It's that simple, really. Again, when I've got a team 26 spots ahead of the other, I think the better team. Not much else to say. Cousin Jared, what do you think?
I really wish this total were 52.5 or something like that, because I think that Troy's defense, so mentioned this a couple of shows ago, but new head coach at Troy is the previous defense coordinator at Kentucky, has some history with some good defenses. I think this game's going to be lower scoring, but the thing is with 51.5 is you're on the south side of some key numbers there, and you just don't feel really good about it because below 51, you're really talking about like 48. 45, 44, and that's quite a distance from those numbers. So this is one of those things where if it got to like 52.5, maybe I'd consider it. I think
52?
I don't know about 52.
You want the win? You want the win on that?
Yeah, because this is like, so I would like bet an under on a 52 where it's a game where I feel like I have a better handle on the teams. Like this is one where like I feel like I have a good handle on Troy's defense, but Marshall, after beating Notre Dame and then they lost to Bowling Green last week. So just with kind of what I've seen from Marshall, I'm just a little on the edge there. But yeah, if this were 52.5, I'd consider an underplay.
Yeah. 7:30 Eastern, New Mexico at LSU. I'm going to lay the 30.5 with LSU. It's a B grade pick. I mean, New Mexico's much improved, but night game in LSU. This feels like it's going to be over before it starts. Model says 31.5. Not an A grade pick, too many points, but I'm on the right side of the key numbers up here, 31 and 32. I don't see getting down to 28. Obviously, that would be great, but I'm just going to get it now before it gets to 31 or 32. I think those are two of the more likely outcomes. I think 35 is pretty likely. Feels like a game that's going to be 21-3 at the end of the first quarter, and it's just going to be a runaway, like I said, night game there. Total's 45. I'm not sure how New Mexico scores on that LSU defense. It's not necessarily the best defense in the country, but relative to what New Mexico's seen, it's very, very good relative to all the other defenses they've seen. I feel like, like I said, 3 points from New Mexico and maybe a scripted first drive where they pull out all the stops seems like about their ceiling outside of a special teams or a turnover type situation, which is always possible. But LSU is just a much better team. So I'm going to lay it with LSU. 30.5 is a big number, but that's what I'm doing. What do you got for us?
Yeah, normally when we talk about totals, we talk about some teams, pulling their starters, not really having, a need to run up the score, yada, yada, yada. I think LSU's starters are on offense, offense and defense, but specifically offense. I think they're going to be out of the game pretty early. The problem is that I think even LSU's second string offense is going to be able to run the ball against New Mexico. And so this is one where I know 45 is a low number. Like you mentioned, I don't think New Mexico is going to score. I would consider under 45. But the thing is even with LSU's backups in, I think they could be able to score pretty much at will. And it kind of comes down to what does the offense coordinator want to do? Are they trying to score points or are they just run up the middle every time? So, had to play something. I think I'd play the under 45, but man, even the LSU's backups could score on this one, and then you're done with a total at that number.
Or would you rather go like a team total on New Mexico under 7.5?
I think that is probably the better play, just because, like I said, I feel like LSU could still score late if they wanted to. So yeah, maybe if there was an under 7.5 out there, maybe that would be the better play.
That'd be the implied right now. I know you never know what's going to happen. Obviously, those aren't out yet. It might be 6.5. 6.5 is a lot tougher just because I feel like New Mexico has one score in them. And it could be 3, it could be 7. So if you go under 7.5, that feels better. LSU plays Auburn next week. On the road, not really a look-ahead spot because, again, Auburn's not that good. But like you said, really no need to keep the starters in that long, given coming off of last week and then another conference game on the road next week. There's not a need for it. It's like you said, I just think LSU is just a much better team. I think they're going to score early, get up early, and then the backups can score. And it just feels like it's going to be a massacre there in Baton Rouge.
Right.
The game of the week, 8 p.m. Eastern, Hawaii and New Mexico State. I don't know if this is on TV, but boy, if it is. Avert your eyes and hide the children. Hawaii ranked 128th, New Mexico State 130th. This is bad. Hawaii gets a little bit of a ding when they travel to the mainlands. Even with that ding, New Mexico State, I don't know how they're a 5-point favorite. I think 3 is probably a little too much, but I understand 3. giving me the win at 3 and the win at 4. I'm taking the 5 with Hawaii. It's a B grade pick. It's a B grade pick specifically because in case this gets to 6 or 7, I can add that extra unit on it. And I really want that push protection or the win on those higher numbers to give it an A grade because Hawaii is still terrible. But this is just a principled play. It's like we talked about last week in the UTEP New Mexico game. Why am I getting this many points with crappy teams playing each other when who the heck knows what's going to happen, right? That sort of thing. This is going to be ugly football. And if it's 0-0 going to overtime, I'd be like, yeah, give me more of this, right?
Yeah,
That's one of those. It won't be obviously similar score here, obviously, but it's just going to be bad football. I don't know how we can get to a number like New Mexico State -5. Model still thinks Hawaii is a little better than New Mexico State on a neutral field. Again, even if that's not true, something over 3 seems like way too much. I'm grabbing the 5 with Hawaii. Can anyone break down the X's and O's of this game? I feel like that's my challenge. Can you break down the X's and O's for us here?
Okay, so number one, I already mentioned in this show that we have a perverted joy with bad games. And,
yes,
and
this
UConn
is it.
And NC
this is
State,
our Super Bowl.
Yeah, UConn and NC State does not qualify. This 100% qualifies.
Yes.
You should be pumped for this game. I can't believe that Hawaii is getting 5 points here, like you said. And so I know it's your shtick. You kind of have to make a play on it. I'm waiting on this because if this gets to 6 or 7, wonderful. If this goes to 4.5 or even 4, wonderful. It is all way more points than Hawaii should be getting in this spot, in my opinion. You talk about the X's and O's. That New Mexico State loss to Nevada in week 1 or the week 0 looks worse and worse with every single passing week. And Hawaii's loss to Vanderbilt, although they got smoked, I think we can all say Vanderbilt's probably at least a little bit better than what also there's every team has 1, maybe 2 games a year where they just don't. Usually every team has 1 game a year that they just don't show up in and 1 game a year that they really outperform in, right? And that was just I think a combination of Vanderbilt just played the game of their lives there, first game of the year, knowing they got to go get a win. We talked about that at the time. Vanderbilt knew they had to go on the road and get a win to try to get to bowl eligibility. It's a huge win to get them to 6. And they came out and played the game of their lives, and Hawaii just didn't look ready to play, and it was just ugly. But it feels excusable. It feels like Hawaii is still terrible, but hasn't looked that bad since then. They just look bad, but not like that level of bad. And look who they've played. They've played Don't look Michigan. Who they played last week. They played Duquesne, but they played Vanderbilt, who blew their doors off. They played Michigan, and they played Western Kentucky, who is, like we've discussed many times on this show, is no pushover at all. Which by the way, I hope everybody watched episode 1 and got Western Kentucky when they were at a reasonable number, because that has moved up almost 4 points from when we talked about that during episode 1. And again, so I feel like Hawaii has played some decent to good competition. New Mexico State has played the same thing, but man, like I said, that loss to Nevada has just been really bad. So I feel like even though it hasn't been, close games, I feel like I know a little bit. I feel like I feel better about where Hawaii is at than where I do with New Mexico State, because I just do not feel good at all about where New Mexico State is at. You mentioned they put in that freshman in the second half of week 0, and you hoped that it would give them a spark, but it hasn't. It hasn't that way. So the game against Minnesota, they didn't look good. The game against Wisconsin played out exactly like we thought it would. Just disastrous. And I think there is something to be said for how good a program is where your baseline regression to that spot should be. Hawaii's program is better than where they are now. Now, that doesn't mean that they're going to and they're not a great program, right? But they at least can have some decent football. They took a dip down because they lost every player, but we expect Hawaii to regress back towards better. And we talked about this from the start. We knew they'd improve from that really bad start. Don't know how fast and don't know exactly what level, but the thought process is Hawaii's always able to get decent enough athletes. We think that the coach can, be competent there, and that we expect Hawaii to slowly get better as the year goes along and get back towards the level of that program, which is obviously not great at this point, but not bottom 5. So we expect Hawaii to get back to that level. New Mexico State has nowhere, they'd have to fight against the grain to get to that level. And so just in terms of as the season, if this was later in the season, I feel even more confident about it, but I expect Hawaii to slowly make strides and get a point or 2 better a game.
as we move forward, or half a point better or whatever, slowly climb up the rankings. I expect them to finish like, 115th or something, right? Still very bad, 120, still very 120th, right? Still very bad, but just slowly getting a little bit better. Whereas New Mexico State, they always can, but there's nothing that leads me to think that. And the hope I had maybe from week one watching that freshman quarterback was like, maybe he'd give him that spark. And then watching what I've seen, I'm like, I still think it's maybe a slightly improved New Mexico State, but that still should be worse than Hawaii. So obviously the big issue with this one, Hawaii sometimes struggles coming to the mainland. In theory, that shouldn't be an issue this year. That seems to be more of an issue with these 6-win Hawaii teams that are maybe taking advantage of a game that they need for that bowl eligibility. This team should be hungry for a win, and there shouldn't be any lackadaisicalness traveling, because they know this is like this is their only chance to win, really, an FBS game all season. So they got to go out there and try to win it, right?
Yeah, exactly. And speaking of perverse joy, this is the perfect opportunity to, again, tip our hat to Florida International, who all of these terrible things that we have said about New Mexico State and UConn, and somehow FIU is a 1.5 clear of New Mexico State for worst team in FBS. And so really, you cannot state how impressive what FIU has done this season has been.
I don't think impressive is the right word there, but I'll let it slide. 8 p.m. Eastern, Louisiana at UL Monroe. This is one that I was waiting on earlier in the week. Model says this should be Louisiana minus 16. Louisiana's rating keeps dropping every week. It's dropped again after last week, down to 77th. Even that might be a tad bit too high, but to some extent, there is a kind of what we talked about with Hawaii. There is a floor of where the program has gotten to. It's only going to drop so much right away. The problem with Louisiana going forward is if things don't get turned around and the recruiting doesn't improve, then it keeps getting lower every single year. But this year, there still is enough talent that they shouldn't drop to 110th this year. Maybe they bottom out around 90th or something. But either way, this UL Monroe team is absolutely terrible. Model ranks them 125th. I don't know what else there is to say other than Louisiana might not be that good, but UL Monroe is so bad. Louisiana ought to be able to go on there and win by double digits. An A-grade play for me, laying the 9 points. Again, model says it should be 16. I think that might be a little high. If it was me making this number, I'd probably make it more like Louisiana minus 13. But the fact that I'm on this side of 10, I'm all over Louisiana. I just think Monroe is terrible. This isn't about Louisiana. It's about just how bad Monroe is. And again, if Louisiana is a top 100 team, which I'm not asking much of them, I'm just asking them to be a top 100 team. Again, right now, model says 77 might be a little high, but as long as they're top 100, they ought to be able to go on the road and win by double digits in this one. Total in this game is 51. Cousin Jared, what do you have for us?
Man, let's see. So So here's the thing. I don't feel like I know anything about Monroe. They have played Texas and Alabama and an FCS team in between those. So
all three of those are pretty comparable, right?
Yeah, all three of those are about the same. Yeah. And Louisiana, if not for the 5 turnovers in the second half committed by Eastern Michigan, I'm not sure they win that game. And then they lost to Rice last week. And that Rice team has just not been good for a while. And so I feel like I don't know anything about Monroe, but what I know about Louisiana is just I'm not the people that have been on the bandwagon for them winning the Sun Belt West. I think losing people every week, even though there's, we talked about the Sun Belt East, there is nobody in the Sun Belt West that you would say you can really, trust. I mean, man, you just go up and down that list. There's a long list of people you don't trust there. South Alabama, I guess, is the team that you trust the most in the Sun Belt West after how they've played this season. But yeah, I don't trust Louisiana, and I know nothing about Monroe. So this is one of those where it's just stay away. And even if one team blows the other out, I still don't know if I feel like I know anything about either of these teams.
Yeah, I think if Louisiana loses this game, that they should be like a bottom 10 team. Bottom 15. Yeah. If they don't win by double digits, like I said, they're not a top 100 team. And again, I'm down on Louisiana. I don't want to say it's my last hurrah with them. Lost with them backing Rice, trying to beat Rice last week. It's just, I think UL Monroe is a lot worse than Rice. And I'm kind of giving them this game to get their act together. Like, this is the spot for Louisiana. If Louisiana's going to go out there and show anything, this is it. Little bit of a rivalry here. So there's no taking frustrations out after last week, right? I don't necessarily know if there's, no love lost or whatever you want to talk about there, but I mean, it feels like, especially after last week, this is not a game where, you're up 3 and you're playing conservative. It seems like a situation where they're going to try to score all the points they can. And like I said, I'm going to ask them to show it to me. And if they don't, then we really have to consider is how low the floor. I think there's a floor for Louisiana, but I mean, if they lose this one or win it by a field goal in overtime or something, we have to wonder, is there a floor for Louisiana, or is it just going to fall right down to the basement?
Yeah, I definitely.
Which is possible.
That's right.
It's possible.
It is possible.
Just like we always talk about, there's always a way you can lose every bet, right? The way you lose this bet is Louisiana is actually just terrible, and we think they're bad, but we don't realize just how terrible they are quite yet,
Yeah, exactly.
The good news is that the priors are starting to diminish in importance, and so the model's really starting to take note of what's happening this year. So it's dropping Louisiana. We'll see if it's dropped them enough. And like I said, I think the model's a little too high on Louisiana, but I'm not asking them to win by the 16th the model thinks. I'm just asking them to win by 10. Mm-hmm. So on the right side of a couple key numbers here makes an A-grade play for me. But I mean, obviously, I do have a little fear in the back of my mind of just how bad Louisiana is. But again, every play, we could go through this in every play. We make these shows 2 hours long, but we can talk exactly why every play is going to lose if we wanted to, right?
Exactly.
All right, that's all the games for this one. Going to recap a few things, any movements, stuff like that. I'm calling this 3-0 and go home because this is a little bit short. I think with Jake, it's the fourth quarter offense because Jake has all the plays, right? So we'll do that in 24 hours. We'll have Jake on, and he'll come back and talk through all the plays. I have one more to go back and talk about. Talked about it on episode 1, Arizona and Cal. That's down to Cal -3. That's an A-grade play for me, so I'm adding my third unit to that one. It is at -120. Again, on this one, model says Cal should be a 9-point favorite. I think Cal's decent, and I'm just not sold on Arizona. I think they're improved, but their rating has actually gone down the last 2 weeks. So the model's calibrated on them. It's not like it's still when the model continues to a team's rating continues to go up or continues to go down, you say it hasn't calibrated yet. It's still trying to figure them out. But Arizona went up, early on, but their rating has gone down the last 2 weeks. So I feel pretty confident where Arizona is. I think California is just a better team at home. I don't know why it's only 3. I'm laying the 3 with Cal. That's an A-grade pick for me, so bumping that up. From the episode 1, that is my extra play here today. Cousin Jared, what do you got for us?
Also, just of note there, I'm looking. The model hasn't really changed too much on Cal at all. So it's adjusted down on Arizona and stayed the same on Cal. So that's pretty interesting, I think. Okay, so 2 things for me. Number 1, first double down of the week. I'm going to double down on the Clemson Wake Forest over. That was at 57. It's gone down to 56.5. We talked about it at length on episode 1. Go back and listen to that. To hear our full discussion on it, but 70 however many points in that game last year. Don't see how that's any different this year. It feels like almost the exact same game over again. So I'm going to double down over 57 in episode 1, get an over 56.5 right now. And the other thing, and Professor, this is partially you contributed to this. I'm going to lay 13 points with Oklahoma against Kansas State. I liked what you had to say about that game. And the more I thought about it, the more I thought Adrian Martinez against Brent Venables. Why am I overthinking this? This seems like a game that if Martinez has to do anything, it's going to be a bad day for Kansas State. I trust Venables to have that defense ready to go. So I'm going to lay the 13 points with Oklahoma. Again, I feel like this happens every year with Kansas State and Oklahoma. I feel like usually I'm experienced enough in years past not to fall for it. I'm going to fall for it this year. I'm going to
I feel like in years past, though, we've been on Kansas State in this spot. I feel like when Kansas State's played Texas and Oklahoma, I feel like we've tended to just be like, nah, be on the Wildcats in this one. That people
of course, when they play Texas, of course, that's completely different. They win the Texas game. Yeah. They blow out Texas. It's always a close game with Oklahoma.
Yeah, but I feel like we've been on the Kansas State side against Oklahoma usually. So this is one of the rare times in I feel like the last decade or so where I've been like, Oklahoma is just going to destroy them, I think.
Yeah. So you talked me into it, Professor.
All right. Well, I believe that is all we've got for you. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Picks with the Professor. Check out the website if you haven't yet. It's www.pickswiththeprofessor.com. Don't forget to subscribe so you can ensure all the sports betting content we provide on this channel shoved right into your feed. We'll see you again in 24 hours with our friend Jake for more college football betting content. And until then, best of luck. And remember, you can eat your betting money, but please don't bet your eating money.